Can you tell me what you think of artists?
Well, if you ask me, I think all artists are a bit crazy. There's not a good one amongst them, I don't think. They're not really good, decent people, if you know what I mean. You know, they take drugs, they do a lot of drinking, and believe in free love. As far as I'm concerned, I don't think there's a good, decent citizen among them.
Artists? Well, I have different thoughts about artists. You know, I've worked hard all my life, and all my life I've paid my taxes. What does the government do? They give the money to artists. You know, the trouble with those fellows is that they're all freeloaders. They live off the fat of the land, you know, off my taxes. They figure, some of them, that all they've got to do is to, why work like everyone else, you know, why get a job when I can get a government grant? My God, then they sit around all day and paint a bit when they feel like it, you know. No, they're freeloaders, every one of them.
In the summer of 1937, A.Y. Jackson, the illustrious Canadian landscape painter and member of the Group of Seven, gazed at the endless space of the prairies through the protective window of a CPR club car. To his eyes, the prairies brought only disappointment. Unmoved, he wrote,
"The foregrounds are a problem because so often there's nothing but a few weeds, scrub, or stubble to get hold of. It's hot. The color's all bleached out of the sky. It's a case of trying to make something out of nothing."
But history has proven Jackson's intuition wrong. The prairies, instead of being a desert for artistic creativity, have given birth to Western Canadian painters whose work now challenges the quality and inspiration of A.Y. Jackson himself.
And I refer to drawings and watercolors, and you know, I have different sources. And then I do an awful lot of painting out, so I have a good idea of what I'm painting. I go stale if I don't paint out.
I'm working mostly in color chords without trying to, there's no images here. It's just a color relationship to each other, and that's it.
To me, art always was, I think, communication. I wanted to tell people show them the things I observe and the things I see and the way I see them. And I find language, the spoken language, not sufficient. I want to paint the things and draw the things the way I see them and communicate it to people who might look at it.
Dorothy Knowles was born at midnight between April 6th and 7th, 1927, in Unity, Saskatchewan. She was the last of 4 children and almost a full generation younger than her 3 brothers. She grew up alone. In 1951, Dorothy Knowles married William Parahudoff, a non-objective color field painter. They have 3 daughters. Dorothy and Bill now live quietly in their home in Saskatoon, each working steadily at their chosen styles of painting.
Canada always had a lot of good landscape painters. I mean, a lot of good. Just to keep this century, there was Goodrich Roberts and de Tonencourt and W.L. Stevenson in Alberta, and the Seven, of course, and Lemieux in Quebec. I think Dorothy Knowles comes in that line, and she comes in her own right. I don't think she reflects their influence so much. She reflects maybe that tradition. And she's got a tough terrain to paint from. The flat or rolling Saskatchewan prairie. And she makes more out of that. I think Knowles should be known outside Canada. Now that there's been a revival of representational painting, I could hope that that revival may encourage interest in her art outside Canada.
I guess I do it because it's something I can do. I paint, and when I'm finished, I don't feel I've done what I would like to do, and I feel I should start right all over again. I started studying with Rita Cawley at a short course at Emma Lake, 6 weeks, and I enjoyed it. I liked it very much, and I've never stopped since.
Dorothy Knowles' landscapes possess a unity of vision. No single detail predominates as she deals with nature's diversity. Her foregrounds are often soft, while her skies and distant horizons are sharp with crisp colors. This draws the eye into the painting and gives the viewer a sense of real presence. Dorothy Knowles applies thin layers of oil paint, allowing the white canvas to shine through, as light does through a stained glass window. This gives her landscapes a light, impressionistic quality.
She's a tremendous artist. She's changed the style of landscape painting in Canada. She's taken it a step no one else prior to her had done. Aesthetically, she's beautiful. As you can see, the canvas behind me, it's one of her nicest and best known pieces. But Dorothy's pictures are probably, I would say today in Canadian art, one of the most sought after commodities by collectors. Her canvases are few and far between, and they're very, very rare. They're very hard to come by, so you literally have to rush to buy her pictures. You have to be willing to stand in line if you're going to get them.
I'll be with you in a minute.
Though she is a nationally renowned landscape painter by profession, Dorothy Knowles has always been a housewife by occupation. Since her marriage, she has raised her family and looked after her household.
How did Clement Greenberg influence your work, or you, if at all?
Well, he influenced me in that he encouraged me to go back to a more closer to realism. I was always, what you might say, semi-abstract.
Her indoor studio has been a small space in the basement, only a few steps away from her washer and dryer. Here she has worked prolifically for many years.
Oh, Dorothy, I like it.
Dorothy Knowles has always been so modest and diffident, as her husband, who's an equally good painter, William Parahudoff, and without great pretensions and without pushing. Good God, Miss Knowles wouldn't know how to push. She's made herself, her art has made itself so large in Canada, I would say. I don't think Canadians or other people, other admirers of Dorothy Knowles, have to worry about her reputation outside or inside Canada. Her art will make its own way. It's, in fact, up to her and nobody else. It's not up to promotion. It's not up to anything else. It's up to Miss Knowles herself, and I think she has it.
William Parahudoff was born on April 21st, 1919, in Langham, Saskatchewan, the son of Doukhobor settlers. He studied at the Colorado Fine Arts Center in New York and in Pittsburgh at the Carnegie Institute of Technology. In 1951, he married Dorothy Knowles, and together they spent a year traveling and studying in England, France, and Italy. Parahudoff and his wife returned to the family farm in Langham at the end of 1951 to work the land, as his parents had done before him. but a series of crop failures forced them to move to Saskatoon, where Perahudov found work as a commercial artist with modern press.
Keep moving even if it's not as fast as you'd want them to. It took me 25 years to work here to retire. I enjoyed my commercial art once I got to knack of it.
Perhaps it is something to do with being the son of Doukhobor settlers, a descendant of a people who have tilled the soil for generations, that makes Perahudov return to seed and to harvest each year, in spite of his success as an artist.
Seems to me it's...
Even when he was a student in New York and in Colorado, he staggered his studies to be able to come home to the family farm to put in and take off the crop.
Time where you spend the winter tending more to creative, I feel, where you spend more time reading, and you change with the active life in summertime. And I can paint here somehow. It feels more natural to me.
Perahudov works on his paintings in a small studio attached to the garage in his backyard. A few years ago, he developed an allergy to the acrylic paint he uses as the medium for his work. This is why he must wear a face mask while he paints.
Bill Perahudov has been described as a color field painter, abstract color painter. It doesn't tell you very much. It tells you that he uses color rather than anything else. And I think what is extraordinary about his paintings is that within these very limited means, leaving out modeling, three-dimensional forms, recognizable images, deep space, narrative, all of the things that go along with traditional representational painting, with this one essential element, he manages to create a very lyrical, very moving images which have an extraordinary range of emotion.
Usually I started painting with very thin layers of transparent acrylic colors, and I slowly build it up with different layers until I get the proper color interaction. And later, sometimes for structure, I put my stronger opaque colors.
What is unique about Bill Perahudov's color field painting is that he's better than most people. He may be the only contemporary abstract painter who studied Goethe's color theory and understood it. He makes it look very easy. You know, it looks as though it all goes down in one inspired rush. And in fact, to some extent this is true, that he uses, you know, the peak of his creative energy when he's doing these things. But there's a lot of craft, a lot of knowledge of how to control how the paint will attach itself to the canvas. For instance, some of the things that look like just wonderfully spontaneous modulations of color are really the result of having laid in things on the raw canvas that will, part of it will have a ground, part of it won't. There'll be colors underneath. And when he puts in those final washes of color, he has this extraordinary range of surfaces. I've seen him study a painting with colored bars for hours, and then maybe change one bar, and it will just change the tuning of the painting. You know, it's extraordinarily knowledgeable painting. It's very beautiful, and that's one of the best things about good art. It's nice to look at.
Ernest Lindner is 83 and has been a painter for almost 60 years. Yet at times, he insists that only now is he beginning his career as an artist. Lindner's regard for nature, which emerges continuously in his work, is said by critics to spring from the Naturwissenschaft, a school of thought popular in Germany at the turn of the century. It longed for a pure state of nature apart from and uninfluenced by man.
And instead of a limb which has aged naturally, and leaving this out, I would concentrate on all the different varieties of growths which are on here, of which there are a great deal. Like this is different moss from this is different moss from this is a little lichen. There are those little cups that look like little toadstools sticking up. That's a different kind of moss again. You see here the traces, for example, of the wood borer, which were working underneath the bark and which makes this sort of a pattern. I have quite a few old stumps at home in Saskatoon. I want to make something of them because they are such intricate patterns and very, very free design patterns.
I think my first encounter with his work was through reproduction, which is not a particularly favorable way, I think, of seeing an artist's work. And the reproductions of the work I saw were not of figure subjects. They were fragments of woodland, gnarled stumps of trees, decaying vegetation, fungus, that kind of thing. I thought they were fascinating. I immediately was put in mind of some of the early naturalist painters who concentrated on that kind of microcosmic view of the universe. You know, a whole world in the stump of a tree, as it were, a whole universe revealed there, and it put me in mind of some of the early German artists like Dürer and Altdorfer and painters of that kind. And I didn't at that time know very much about Lindner at all, or his background. All that he had been originally trained in Vienna.
The fact that on Sundays my parents spent very much time at church, and when I was small I was left alone at home, and the family Bible, which every middle-class family had at the time, had illustrations by Doré in it. And I used to sit and look at those pictures, and I wasn't interested in reading. They were very stimulating to your imagination. When I first came into this country here, I looked at things from a distance, like most people do. But I found then when I was able to go into the forest, that I began to see the real things, where the life goes on. To see the life on a tree trunk, one has to come very close to see the lichen, the way the bark peels off, and the way the juice runs in the tree, and so on. All this, the detail where the real life is going on. And I found that so much more interesting. And so many more different forms of life, too. In a small thing like this, there's a little orchid over there. There's a bloom of a plant which will be a red berry later on. Then there are these running things which produce the twin flowers, where there are always two flowers on one stem, all in just a little space, which we completely miss when we just look at things instead of into things.
Home for Ernie Lindner is a 2-story frame house in Saskatoon. He rises early, enjoys a leisurely breakfast, then climbs the stairs to his studio for a day of work that will last until the light begins to fade.
I started to use slides when I didn't do so much outdoor sketching anymore. Also, since I had more time to work on my finished paintings and working out my ideas, I concentrated much more on detail. Time I spent on a painting became longer and longer, and models couldn't possibly pose for weeks on end in the same position and so on. So I started to use slides. The reason I, for example, have interwoven human figure with natural surroundings, that I feel that the human beings are part of the biosphere and not anything really separate. That our molecules are the same as the molecules on a tree, and the same laws applicable to us. I am interested in the detail because I think that the biological life is going on in the detail. I think on a square inch of a person's skin, a knowledgeable doctor could tell more about their health and their age than they could by looking at them, particularly if they have a good makeup on. And the same on trees. The real life goes on in the bark, in the juice running up and down the tree, and then the roots and so on. And I also feel, of course, very strongly, as far as ecology is concerned, that we have to again learn to live with our environment and not cannibalize it, as we are doing right now.
What about the continuity of life thing?
Well, that is obvious, because life does never stop. Just like the horizon is only an imaginary line. As you keep on going to the horizon, it moves away, you never reach it. You're finding deep.
Well, what's happening is that they're so much more advanced than I am at this point.
Oh, yeah.
That I'm finding it a little bit difficult, yeah. But I'm prepared to do that because I realize that that's sort of the position they're in. They've been working.
Although he is 83, Ernie Lindner's colleagues continually praise him for his youthful enthusiasm and thinking. This joie de vivre is a product of his constant association with young people, first as a high school art teacher, and now as a man who welcomes both their ideas and their company.
I noticed in all of your paintings, especially the ones that have to do with the forest, that all of your figures are nude figures. You paint no one in the woods with clothing on. You want to talk about that a bit?
Well, it seems to me obvious that as soon as you would put clothes on, you would times the picture when it has been taken. And you don't put clothes on trees when you paint them, or on animals.
But how does that make people feel who are sort of prudish about that?
They do enjoy it, but they pretend they are not enjoying it. Really, I think. I've never quite been able to figure it out, but I think it is a remnant of the Victorian age and of Queen Victoria. Because even in countries which are very strictly religious, like the Calvinists in Switzerland and the Norwegian Lutherans and so on, there is not that attitude toward nudeness.
I find it difficult to believe that anybody could fail to enjoy and appreciate Ernest Lindner's work. All I could suggest is that they look at it again, perhaps in the light of the things which we've been talking about, and look beyond it as a representation, perhaps, of figures and of trees and so on, and look at it as a man's testament to his joy in living. And I think as Lindner has grown older, so his work becomes more magnificently alive and more magnificently young. It's almost incredible that work, with its tremendous affirmation of life and of joy, is the work of a man in his 80s. I think that's a miraculous thing about it.
To me, an artist are the people like Matisse and Chagall and so on, the great masters. Anything below that is just reaching out for something. And I'm not sure, yeah, and I don't think anybody can say that I am an important artist of any sort yet. It depends how my work stands up in the long run. Partly with the public too. I don't know. I really don't.